The Galactic Council had been at war for 300 cycles. 300 brutal, exhausting, expensive cycles of conflict that had drained 17 civilizations of resources, patience, and hope. And the source of all this misery? The Kreeg Swarm and their endless appetite for territorial expansion. I am Vex, senior diplomatic observer for the Council, and I had seen things that would make your sensory organs malfunction. Battlefields covered in debris, planets stripped of atmosphere, entire star systems reduced to rubble. The Kreeg were efficient killers, each drone connected to a hive mind that made them nearly unstoppable in coordinated assault. Nearly being the operative word. The council chamber that day was thick with tension, the kind you could taste if you had the right biological equipment. Representatives from the Thexian Empire sat rigid in their biosuits, their three eyes rotating nervously. The Borlax delegation, massive creatures of pure muscle and aggression, stomped their feet in frustration. Even the normally calm Wasari floated with agitated movements, their gaseous forms swirling with colors that indicated deep concern. "We cannot continue this stalemate," bellowed Kreeg, the Borlax war chief. His voice rattled the reinforced walls. "Our warriors grow weary, our resources deplete." "Agreed," hissed Ambassador Trell of the Thexian Empire, her translator device crackling with urgency. "The Kreeg push deeper into our territories each rotation. We need fresh perspectives, new strategies, something that can break this cursed deadlock." That is when High Chancellor Morks, looking more exhausted than I had ever seen him, made the announcement that would change everything. His scaled hands trembled slightly as he accessed the holographic display. "There is one species we have not yet consulted," he said quietly, too quietly for such a momentous statement. "A relatively new member of our council. They call themselves humans." The reaction was immediate and predictable. Laughter. Not polite laughter either, but the kind of mocking, dismissive sound that echoed through the chamber like rolling thunder. "The humans," Kreeg snorted, his massive frame shaking with amusement. "Those tiny, fragile creatures from that backwater planet? They barely qualify as sentient. What could they possibly contribute?" Trell joined in, her voice dripping with condescension. "I reviewed their biological specifications when they applied for council membership. Single heart, easily damaged skin, no natural weapons, limited sensory capability. They are prey animals at best, hardly worthy of consideration for military consultation. Their planet Earth is not even fully unified under one government," added Velox, the Wasari spokesperson, colors shifting to amused yellow. "They still engage in primitive conflicts among themselves. What wisdom could such a divided species offer?" I kept my thoughts to myself, but I remembered something about the humans. During the membership approval process, there had been unusual notes in their file. Multiple extinction-level events survived, apex predator status achieved through persistence rather than physical superiority, and a disturbing tendency toward what they called stubbornness. Morks raised his hand for silence, and eventually, the chamber quieted down. "Nevertheless, the human delegation has requested an audience. They claim to have analyzed our conflict and developed a potential solution. I have granted them permission to present." More laughter, more dismissive gestures, more arrogance from species who should have known better. The chamber doors opened, and in walked the human delegation. 3 adults in formal attire, looking professional and composed, despite the obvious hostility in the room. But what caught everyone's attention, what made the laughter die in throats and gas sacs, was what accompanied them. A human child, no more than 8 cycles old by their developmental standards. Small, with bright eyes and a mop of dark hair that stuck up at odd angles. And beside this child, on a reinforced leash that looked hilariously inadequate, was a creature I had to reference my datapad to identify. Honey badger. Mellivora capensis, native to Earth's African continent. The creature was roughly half a meter long, covered in thick gray and black fur, with small eyes that seemed to evaluate everything in the room as either food or threat. It moved with a rolling gait that suggested both boredom and readiness to commit violence at a moment's notice. "Esteemed council members," began the lead human diplomat, a woman named Victoria Yang. Her voice was steady, professional. "Thank you for this audience. I am here with my colleagues, and this is Marcus, along with his companion, Brutus. You brought a child to a war council? Trell's voice was sharp with disbelief. And what is that animal? Some sort of pet? Marcus, the human child, looked up at the massive, holographic displays showing battle footage, then at the assembled aliens, and smiled. It was not a nervous smile. It was the kind of smile that suggested he knew something everyone else did not. Brutus isn't just a pet, Marcus said clearly, his young voice carrying surprisingly well in the acoustically designed chamber. He's my best friend, and he's going to help you win your war. The laughter returned, louder this time, almost cruel. Kreeg slapped his massive thigh hard enough to dent the floor plating. A child and his pet will end a 300-cycle conflict? This is an insult. But Victoria Yang did not flinch. We humans have a saying, do not judge a book by its cover. Before you dismiss us, watch this. She activated a portable holographic projector. The air in front of the assembly shimmered and solidified into a recording. The timestamp indicated it was from 2 weeks prior, location marked as a remote training facility on Earth. The scene showed Marcus and Brutus in what appeared to be a combat simulation arena. Facing them were 3 automated combat drones, each programmed with Kreeg tactical patterns that our intelligence division had provided. Begin simulation, announced a calm, computerized voice. What happened next made every being in that chamber lean forward. Eyes, sensors, and optical arrays focused with sudden intensity. The drones activated, moving with the precise coordination that made Kreeg forces so deadly. They spread out, attempting to surround and overwhelm from multiple angles. Standard Kreeg opening maneuver, one we had seen cost countless lives on real battlefields. Marcus simply pointed and said one word. Brutus. Go. The honey badger moved. But move is too gentle a word for what occurred. Brutus exploded into motion like a biological missile, low to the ground, incredibly fast, and apparently possessed of either absolute fearlessness or complete insanity. Possibly both. The first drone targeted Brutus, energy weapon, charging. Brutus did not dodge. He went straight at it, teeth bared, making a sound that the translator struggled to process but eventually settled on describing as aggressive chittering mixed with pure rage. The drone fired. The energy beam that would have vaporized most unshielded organic matter hit Brutus square in the chest. The honey badger stumbled, rolled, got back up, and kept coming. Honey badgers have extremely thick skin and dense musculature, Victoria Yang narrated calmly while the council watched in stunned silence. They evolved to survive attacks from lions, hyenas, and venomous snakes. That drone's energy output, while lethal to most species, only slowed Brutus down. The honey badger reached the first drone and proceeded to demonstrate why its species has a reputation on Earth for absolute ferocity. Claws that seemed disproportionately sharp tore through armored plating. Teeth designed for cracking bones bit through crucial circuitry. In under 15 seconds, the first drone was a sparking pile of expensive debris. The other 2 drones recalibrated, adjusting tactics exactly as Kreeg forces would. They synchronized their fire patterns, creating a crossfire zone that should have been inescapable. Marcus never looked worried. He had positioned himself behind cover, and was watching Brutus with the calm confidence of someone who knows exactly how this ends. Brutus hit the second drone before it could complete its firing sequence, attacking with such savage intensity that its threat assessment protocols apparently malfunctioned. The display showed error messages cascading across its systems. How do you program appropriate responses to a creature that simply does not care about damage, pain, or overwhelming odds? The third drone attempted to flee, which was fascinating. Its programming recognized a threat it could not effectively neutralize, and decided retreat was optimal. On a real battlefield against Kreeg, this would have worked. The Kreeg would regroup, call reinforcements, adapt tactics. Brutus did not care about tactical retreats. He chased that drone across the entire arena, climbing over obstacles, squeezing through gaps that seemed too small for his body mass, and finally catching it just as it reached the simulation boundary. The destruction was thorough and slightly excessive. Simulation complete, announced the computer. All hostile units neutralized. Time elapsed, 47 seconds. The recording ended. The council chamber was absolutely silent. You could have heard a single molecule vibrate. Victoria Yang let that silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable before continuing. Honey badgers are not the strongest creatures on Earth. They are not the largest, not the fastest, not the most intelligent in traditional measures. But they possess something that makes them uniquely effective. They simply do not quit. Ever. They fight threats 10 times their size. They raid beehives despite thousands of stings. They have been observed eating venomous snakes that should have killed them. Their scientific classification might as well be relentless aggression given physical form. She paused, looking at each council member in turn. And young Marcus here has been training with Brutus since he was 3 years old. They understand each other in ways that transcend normal human-animal bonding. Marcus can predict Brutus's actions with 98% accuracy. Brutus responds to Marcus's commands even in high-stress combat situations. Together, they represent something your war has been missing. And what is that? I found myself asking, my curiosity finally overcoming my professional neutrality. Marcus answered, his young voice carrying absolute certainty. Unpredictability combined with refusal to lose. The Kreeg are a hive mind, right? They are super good at coordinated tactics, working together, adapting as a group. But they think everyone fights the same way. Logical, organized, with self-preservation instincts. Brutus doesn't work that way, and I have learned to think like he does. Kreeg, who had been silent since the recording ended, finally spoke. His voice had lost all its mocking tone. You seriously propose sending a child and an earth animal against the Kreeg Swarm? Not alone, obviously, Victoria Yang replied quickly. We propose something more sophisticated. Let me explain the full operational plan. She activated her projector again, this time showing tactical schematics. Our intelligence analysis identified the core problem with your current strategy. The Kreeg adapt to whatever you throw at them because your tactics, while varied by species, all follow logical military doctrine. Preserve resources, minimize casualties, achieve objectives through overwhelming force or superior strategy. The Kreeg counter this because their hive mind can process and adapt to logical patterns faster than individual commanders can adjust. The hologram shifted, showing Kreeg Swarm patterns. But there is a weakness in hive mind structure. When confronted with something genuinely unpredictable, something that violates their tactical algorithms, they experience processing delays while trying to categorize and respond to the new threat. During those delays, they are vulnerable. You want to use unpredictability as a weapon? Trell asked, her translator carrying notes of intrigue rather than dismissal now. Exactly. Victoria confirmed. Marcus and Brutus will be inserted into key conflict zones. Their objective is not to win battles through conventional means. Their objective is to create chaos, to be so aggressively unpredictable that the Kreeg hive mind dedicates processing resources to analyzing and countering them. While they are distracted, your conventional forces strike at the true objectives. Marcus spoke up again, showing a tactical maturity that seemed wrong for his apparent age. Basically, Brutus and I will be the loudest, most annoying thing the Kreeg have ever seen. We will attack things we shouldn't be able to defeat, survive things that should kill us, and do it all while making them think we are the main threat. Classic misdirection, right? Velox's gaseous form swirled thoughtfully. A distraction strategy using biological weapons that do not behave according to standard threat assessment parameters. Fascinating. But sending a child into active combat zones. Your species approves this? Victoria Yang's expression became more serious. Marcus volunteered. His parents are both military strategists who recognized his unique aptitude. And before you judge, understand that human children are more capable than you assume. We do not coddle our young into helplessness. We train them, challenge them, prepare them for harsh realities. Marcus has completed combat training that would qualify him as a special operations candidate in our military, and he has Brutus. That partnership is worth more than you can imagine. I watched Marcus during this explanation. He stood straight, not fidgeting, not showing fear or uncertainty. His hand rested on Brutus's head, fingers scratching behind the honey badger's ears. Brutus, for his part, looked utterly relaxed, despite being surrounded by dozens of alien species, any one of which could have crushed him with minimal effort. Neither of them looked like they doubted this plan for even a moment. Morx leaned forward, his ancient eyes studying the human child and his companion. If we agree to this, and it fails, we lose nothing. We are already losing. But if it succeeds, even marginally, it could shift momentum in our favor, For the first time in 300 cycles. He paused, then addressed Marcus directly. Young human, do you understand the danger? Do you comprehend what you are volunteering to face? Marcus nodded. Yes, sir. The Kreeg are scary, and lots of people have died fighting them. But Brutus and I, we are a team, and we don't back down from scary things. That's kind of our whole deal. Brutus made a sound that my translator rendered as agreeable growling. The vote was called. Species after species, delegation after delegation, voted to approve the human proposal. Some voted because they saw strategic merit, some because they were desperate for any advantage, and some, I suspect, because they simply wanted to see what would happen when you threw a human child and a honey badger at a 300-cycle war. The motion passed unanimously. As the chamber began to clear, I approached the human delegation. Victoria Yang was reviewing deployment schedules with her colleagues, but Marcus was sitting cross-legged on the floor, playing some kind of hand game with Brutus that involved quick movements and what appeared to be treats being dispensed for successful responses. May I ask you something? I said to Marcus. He looked up, smiling politely. Sure. Are you afraid? Marcus considered this seriously, his young face scrunching up in concentration. A little, I guess. But my dad told me something important. He said fear is just your brain trying to keep you safe. It is not bad to feel scared. What matters is what you do even when you are scared. And besides, he reached down to hug Brutus, who tolerated this affection with patient dignity. I have my best friend with me. We have done scary stuff before. We will do it again. What is the scariest thing you have done together? I asked, genuinely curious. Marcus grinned, and for a moment, he looked exactly like the child he was. Last summer, we went camping, and a huge black bear came into our sight looking for food. Dad said to back away slowly, make noise, try to scare it off. But Brutus, he just charged that bear, making all his angry sounds, biting at its legs. That bear was like 10 times bigger than him, but Brutus didn't care. And you know what? The bear left, just turned around and walked away like it suddenly remembered it had somewhere else to be. After that, I figured, if Brutus could scare off a bear, we could probably handle anything. I accessed my datapad and looked up black bears, large omnivorous mammals, capable of extremely dangerous violence, weighing up to 300 kilograms. And a 5-kilogram honey badger had intimidated one into retreat. Perhaps the council had made a wise decision after all. Or perhaps we had all lost our collective sanity. The next week passed in a blur of preparation, briefings, equipment testing, and integration planning. Marcus and Brutus were fitted with protective gear that was lightweight but incredibly durable, designed by human engineers who seemed to have experience keeping small aggressive creatures alive in hostile environments. The target was chosen carefully. A Kreeg forward operating base on the border planet Kreeg Swarm. It was heavily defended, strategically positioned, and currently preparing for a major offensive push. Intelligence suggested approximately 10,000 Kreeg drones operated from this location, coordinated by at least 3 hive nodes. Standard council doctrine would call for a fleet assault, massive bombardment, followed by ground forces numbering at least 50,000 troops. Casualties would be catastrophic, and success was far from guaranteed. The human plan was different. Laughably, insanely different. 1 transport ship, 1 child, 1 honey badger, 1 support team of 20 human soldiers who specialized in what they called asymmetric warfare, and enough explosives to level a small moon. The mission briefing took place aboard the transport vessel, a human ship called the Defiant Legacy. The name seemed appropriate. Marcus sat at the briefing table, Brutus in a specialized seat next to him that had been modified to accommodate a creature with short legs and a long body. Around them sat the support team, hard-faced men and women who carried themselves with the confidence of people who had survived impossible situations before. Team leader was a man named Jack Reeves. Scarred, experienced, and apparently famous among human military circles for successful operations that should have ended in disaster. He addressed Marcus with respect, not condescension. Okay, Marcus, you know the drill. We insert at 0300 local time, when Kreeg activity is at minimum. You and Brutus make noise at the western perimeter. The Kreeg will detect you immediately and send response forces. That is when we hit the power nodes on the eastern side. Once power is disrupted, the hive nodes will be vulnerable for approximately 4 minutes before backup systems engage. Our fleet strikes during that window. Marcus nodded, looking at the holographic display showing the base layout. What about the drones between me and the extraction point? You do what you do best, Reeves said with a slight smile. Survive, and make them regret every second they spend trying to stop you. And so, with a plan that violated every principle of military doctrine I had ever studied, the mission launched. I watched from the observation deck of the Council command ship, positioned safely in high orbit. Sensor feeds showed the transport approaching Kelix 4, entering atmosphere, flying low and fast to avoid detection. The insertion point was a rocky canyon 2 kilometers from the Kreeg base. The transport hovered just long enough for the team to rappel down, then immediately departed to avoid sensor tracking. On the ground, in darkness broken only by Kelix 4's 3 moons, Marcus checked his gear one final time. Brutus was already straining at his leash, sensing upcoming excitement. Okay, buddy, Marcus whispered, though the communication relay transmitted it clearly to all observers. Remember, we are not trying to win. We are just trying to be really, really annoying. Brutus made his aggressive, chittering sound, which I was beginning to recognize as his version of enthusiastic agreement. The team moved into position. Reeves and his soldiers headed east, silent shadows equipped with enough firepower to fight a small war. Marcus and Brutus headed west, toward the heavily fortified main entrance of the Kreeg base. What happened next would become legendary. Marcus and Brutus approached the western perimeter of the Kreeg base just as Kelix 4's largest moon crested the horizon, bathing everything in pale blue light. The base was massive, a sprawling complex of biomechanical architecture that pulsed with the rhythmic glow of hive activity. Guard towers dotted the perimeter, each hosting 3 Kreeg drones whose compound eyes scanned for threats with methodical precision. Any reasonable military force would observe, calculate angles of fire, plan suppression tactics, coordinate timing with support elements. Marcus was 8 years old and had a honey badger. Reasonable was not part of the equation. Brutus, Marcus whispered, pointing at the nearest guard tower. See that? Go say hello. He unclipped the leash. What followed made every military observer watching the sensor feeds question their understanding of combat tactics. Brutus accelerated from standstill to full rampage in roughly 1 second, crossing open ground that should have gotten him vaporized within 3 seconds. The Kreeg guards spotted him immediately, their weapons tracking, energy signatures spiking as they prepared to fire. Brutus reached the tower base before they completed target acquisition. He went straight up the support structure, claws finding purchase on the biomechanical surface, climbing with terrifying speed while making sounds that my translator kept labeling as sustained fury. The first Kreeg drone leaned over to fire directly down. Brutus jumped, caught the drone's limb in his jaws, and the weight of his body combined with his thrashing momentum pulled the drone completely off the tower. They hit the ground together, the drone's exoskeleton cracking on impact. Brutus was on top of it instantly, tearing through joints and sensory apparatus with surgical precision. The other 2 drones descended to assist, which was exactly the wrong tactical decision. Brutus did not fight one opponent and then move to the next. He fought everything simultaneously, spinning between targets, biting, clawing, using his low profile and incredible flexibility to avoid their energy weapons by simply being where they did not expect. Inside the base, alarms began wailing. The distinctive harmonic pattern indicated a security breach. All available drones redirected to western perimeter, threat level escalating rapidly. That is our cue, Reeves transmitted from his position on the eastern side. Marcus just became the biggest problem in their entire tactical analysis. Moving on, primary objective now. The Kreeg response was overwhelming. 30 drones poured out of the nearest access tunnel, moving in perfect coordination, forming a containment perimeter that would trap and eliminate any standard threat through concentrated firepower and synchronized movement. Marcus stood his ground, watching them approach. He held something in his hand, and my visual sensors magnified to identify it. A simple remote detonator. Brutus, back! Marcus shouted. The honey badger, currently standing on top of his 3rd destroyed drone, immediately disengaged and sprinted back toward Marcus. His fur was scorched in several places, and he was limping slightly on his left rear leg, but his eyes showed nothing but eagerness for the next engagement. Marcus pressed the detonator. The charges his team had placed during their approach to the perimeter, hidden in locations calculated by sophisticated modeling software, detonated in sequence. Not large explosions designed to destroy, but shaped charges that collapsed the tunnel entrance behind the 30 drones, cutting them off from reinforcement while channeling debris and dust into a obscuring cloud. Humans call this creating a way. Fair fight, Marcus said into his communicator, and I detected something in his voice. Amusement. The child was enjoying this. The 30 isolated drones recalculated immediately, adapting to the changed tactical situation. They spread into a search pattern optimized for locating threats in low visibility conditions. Their hive node was processing probabilities, running scenarios, attempting to categorize this unexpected opponent. Brutus hit them from an angle the hive mind had rated as low probability, because it required climbing a near vertical rock face that sensors indicated was unstable and dangerous. Brutus did not care about unstable and dangerous. Brutus cared about attacking from where they were not looking. The chaos that followed was beautiful in the way that natural disasters are beautiful, terrible and unstoppable, and utterly without mercy. Brutus moved through the drone formation like a biological blender, targeting the same vulnerable joint and sensor systems, creating damage disproportionate to his size. The drones adapted, adjusting fire patterns, attempting containment protocols. Marcus was not idle during this. He moved through the obscuring dust with the confidence of someone who had trained in low visibility conditions, placing small devices on specific locations around the perimeter, proximity mines, each programmed to detonate only when Kreeg biological signatures approached. Eastern Team. Status? Marcus asked calmly while literally walking through an active combat zone. Power Node 1 destroyed, Reeves responded, and I could hear explosions in his background audio. Node 2 in progress. Krieger confused as hell. They keep pulling forces away from us to deal with whatever you are doing. It is working exactly like planned. Brutus, rotate left, Marcus called out, and the honey badger immediately pivoted, engaging a group of drones that had been attempting to flank Marcus's position. The coordination between them was uncanny, each seeming to know instinctively where the other needed them to be. More drones poured from secondary access points, and now I could see the hive mind adjusting its tactical assessment. They were committing heavy assault units, larger drones with enhanced armor and energy weapons powerful enough to vaporize reinforced structures. These were units normally reserved for fighting Council battle mechs. They were deploying them against a child and a honey badger. Marcus saw them coming and actually laughed. The sound was incongruous against the background of weapons, fire, and destruction. Brutus, remember that move we practiced with the concrete barriers? Brutus made an affirmative chittering sound. The heavy assault drones advanced in a wedge formation, designed to concentrate firepower while maintaining defensive cohesion. Standard anti-fortification tactics. Devastating against static defenses. Marcus ran directly at them. Every tactical algorithm I possessed screamed that this was suicide. The child was charging a formation that could level buildings, armed with nothing but explosives and audacity. The Kreeg clearly calculated the same thing, holding fire briefly because their threat assessment could not reconcile the action with any known combat doctrine. That hesitation cost them. Marcus slid under the lead drone at the last possible second, his small size allowing him to pass beneath its weapons arc. As he slid, he attached a magnetic charge to its undercarriage, then kept rolling to exit on the far side of the formation. The lead drone rotated to track him, which meant it rotated away from Brutus, who had climbed onto a destroyed guard tower and launched himself through the air in a trajectory that should have been impossible for something with his body structure. He landed on the lead drone's back, immediately biting through power conduits while his claws tore at sensory equipment. The drone tried to shake him off, stumbling into its formation partner, disrupting their coordinated positioning. Marcus detonated the charge. The lead drone did not explode outward. Instead, the shaped charge directed all its force upward, through the drone's main chassis, turning its armored body into shrapnel that tore through the formation from within. 3 heavy assault drones destroyed by their own teammates' armor fragments. Brutus rode the lead drone down as it collapsed, jumping clear at the last moment, landing in a ready stance, looking for the next target. Eastern team reports power node 2 destroyed. A voice crackled over comms. They are pulling back to extraction point Alpha. Marcus, you need to disengage. Fleet strike incoming in 90 seconds. Copy that, Marcus replied, breathing hard now. His protective gear was scored with energy burns, and he had a cut above his left eye that was bleeding down his face. He looked like he had been through a war. He looked absolutely alive. Brutus, home time, Marcus called. The honey badger was distant, currently engaged with 2 more drones, biting through the leg joint of one while dodging energy fire from the other. At Marcus's call, he executed a maneuver that seemed to defy physics, twisting between the drones, causing them to hit each other with their own weapons fire, then sprinting toward Marcus's position. They ran together, boy and animal, while behind them the Kreeg base erupted into complete pandemonium. Drones poured from every access point, the hive mind finally committing its full resources to eliminating this threat that had caused catastrophic damage to base integrity and tactical cohesion. The proximity mines Marcus had placed activated as the Kreeg pursuit force triggered them, creating a cascading series of explosions that collapsed additional tunnel systems and sent debris showering across the perimeter. I watched the sensor displays in awe. A single human child and 1 Earth animal had drawn the attention of an entire Kreeg forward operating base, had caused the destruction of dozens of drones and critical infrastructure, and had done it all in under 15 minutes. Marcus reached the extraction point, a cleared area where the transport could briefly land. Reeves and his team were already there, perimeter secured, covering fire, keeping back the pursuing Kreeg forces. Welcome back, Reeves said with a grin. Nice work. Thanks, Marcus gasped, hands on his knees, catching his breath. Brutus was panting heavily beside him, fur matted with various fluids I did not want to identify. That was intense. Fleet strike in 30 seconds, the transport pilot announced. Everyone load up, now. They scrambled aboard, the transport lifting off immediately, engines screaming as it clawed for altitude. Below them, the Kreeg base was a hive of frantic activity. Every drone focused on the western perimeter, on the impossible threat that had somehow penetrated their defenses, which meant nobody was watching the eastern section when the Council fleet opened fire. The orbital bombardment was precise, surgical, targeted exclusively at the locations where Reeves's team had destroyed the power nodes. Without power, the hive nodes could not coordinate defenses, could not activate shielding, could not effectively respond. The base was destroyed in 40 seconds of concentrated fire. 10,000 Kreeg drones eliminated. 3 hive nodes destroyed. A major staging area for their planned offensive reduced to smoking craters. 0 Council casualties. The transport cleared atmosphere and docked with the command ship. As the airlock cycled, I made my way to the docking bay, joining the crowd of species representatives who had gathered to see the returning team. Marcus emerged first, still carrying Brutus, who looked remarkably unconcerned for someone who had just fought a small army. The child's face was dirty, bleeding, exhausted. He smiled when he saw the assembled crowd. Did it work? He asked. Mork stepped forward, his ancient voice carrying absolute conviction. Young Marcus, you and your companion have accomplished what our finest military strategists could not achieve in 300 cycles. You created chaos where we saw only stalemate. You found weakness where we saw only strength. We just made them look at the wrong place, Marcus said with a shrug. Brutus was the real hero. He did all the hard fighting. Brutus yawned, showing impressive teeth, then closed his eyes and apparently decided this was a good time for a nap. Kreeg approached, each footstep shaking the deck plating. The massive Borlax warrior looked at Marcus for a long moment, then slowly lowered himself into a kneeling position, bringing his eyes level with the child's. I mocked your species, Kreeg said quietly. I called you prey animals, questioned your worth, dismissed your potential. I was a fool blinded by assumptions. You have taught me that strength comes in forms I did not recognize, that courage exists in the smallest vessels, that victory requires creativity more than power. He bowed his head. You honor us with your service. Trell was next, her 3 eyes rotating to focus entirely on Marcus. The Thexian Empire owes you a debt. Our colonies would have fallen in the next offensive cycle. You prevented that. When you are older, if you wish, you will have a place among our strategic command. We could learn much from human tactical philosophy. One by one, species representatives approached Marcus and Brutus, offering thanks, respect, admiration for what they had accomplished. The child handled it with surprising grace, polite and humble, constantly deflecting praise toward his team and especially toward Brutus. Later, after medical treatment and debriefing, I found Marcus in the observation lounge, looking out at the stars. Brutus was curled up on the seat beside him, finally sleeping soundly, making small snoring sounds that the translator rendered as contented rumbling. "How do you feel?" I asked, settling into a seat designed for my physiology. Marcus thought about it carefully, his young face serious. "Tired, happy we helped. A little scared about what happens next." "What do you mean?" "The Kreeg are not gone," Marcus said, showing strategic awareness beyond his years. "We won one battle. We proved that weird tactics work, but now they know about humans, about Brutus and me. They will adapt. That is what hive minds do. So we need to be ready to adapt faster, to stay unpredictable, to keep finding new ways to make them look the wrong direction." "You are not planning to stop?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Marcus looked at Brutus, reaching out to gently scratch behind the sleeping honey badger's ears. "Brutus and I, we are a team, and teams do not quit when things get tough. Besides, I think we can really help. The Council has amazing technology, powerful weapons, really smart strategists, but maybe they needed someone who thinks different, who does not follow the same rules. Someone who learned tactics from a honey badger," I suggested. Marcus grinned. "Exactly. Brutus taught me the most important lesson. It does not matter how big the enemy is, how strong they are, how scary they look. What matters is refusing to back down, finding their weak spots, hitting them where they do not expect, and never, ever giving up. Honey badgers do not know how to surrender. And now, neither do I." "Your parents must be very proud," I said. "They are also probably really worried," Marcus admitted. "But they understand. My dad was a soldier. He told me that sometimes you have to do scary things because they are the right things. And stopping the Kreeg, saving all those people on all those planets, that is definitely the right thing." Over the following months, Marcus and Brutus participated in 17 more operations. Each was different, each required new approaches, new tactics, new applications of unpredictability as a weapon. The Kreeg adapted, but the humans adapted faster. Other Council species began studying human military history, learning about asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations. The war began to turn. Not quickly, not easily, but momentum shifted. The Kreeg, accustomed to logical, predictable opponents, struggled against enemies who embraced chaos as strategy. Marcus and Brutus became symbols, proof that the impossible was merely difficult, that courage existed in all sizes, that determination could overcome raw power. More humans joined the effort. Other children with companion animals, trained teams specializing in unconventional approaches, strategists who thought in terms of confusion and misdirection rather than direct confrontation. The Council military structure evolved, incorporating these new perspectives, becoming more flexible and creative. 2 years after that first mission, the Kreeg sued for peace. Their hive nodes calculated that continued conflict was unsustainable against an enemy that refused to fight according to predictable patterns. The treaty was signed aboard the Council flagship, with representatives from all member species present. Marcus attended, now 10 years old, wearing a formal uniform covered in commendations from multiple civilizations. Brutus was there too, older now, moving a bit slower, but still possessing that fundamental quality of looking ready to fight anything at any moment. During the ceremony, Mork spoke to the assembled dignitaries. "We spent 300 cycles fighting a war we could not win, because we could not imagine victory achieved through means we had never considered. One species, one child, one remarkable animal, showed us that our limitations were self-imposed. We learned that strength exists in forms we did not recognize, that courage does not require size, that creativity can defeat raw power." He paused, looking directly at Marcus. "The humans taught us to question our assumptions, to embrace unpredictability, to fight not with what we thought we should use, but with what actually works. They taught us that sometimes the smallest warriors carry the largest impact." After the ceremony, I found Marcus and Brutus on an observation deck, watching the diplomatic vessels depart, carrying news of peace to worlds that had known only war. "What will you do now?" I asked. "You have become quite famous. Many opportunities will be available to you." Marcus scratched Brutus behind the ears, smiling at his companion. "I am going home for a while. Going to go to regular school, play with regular kids, just be normal for a bit. Brutus deserves a break too. Maybe we will go camping, see if we can find another bear to annoy. And then maybe we will see if there are other problems that need someone who thinks like a honey badger to solve them," Marcus said with a grin. "The galaxy is a big place. Lots of stuff happening. Probably some of it could use a different perspective. The perspective of not caring how big the problem is, attacking it anyway, and refusing to quit until it is solved," I suggested. "Exactly," Marcus agreed. "Brutus and we are pretty good at that." I watched them leave, Child and Honey Badger, unlikely heroes who had changed the course of galactic history by simply being themselves. The Council had sought warriors and found something better. Creatures, human and animal alike, who possessed the one quality that all the technology and strategy in the galaxy could not replicate: absolute, stubborn, relentless determination to win, regardless of odds, obstacles, or what anyone else thought was possible. The humans had arrived on the galactic stage, and they had brought with them weapons more powerful than any energy cannon or plasma bomb. They brought creativity, unpredictability, and a fundamental refusal to accept that anything was impossible. They brought honey badgers, and nothing in the galaxy would ever be quite the same. Years later, when I wrote my official and historical account of the Kreeg War and humanity's role in ending it, I included a quote that Marcus had said during one of our conversations. It captured, I think, the essential nature of what made humans so remarkably effective. Everyone kept saying the war was unwinnable, that the Kreeg were too strong, too coordinated, too advanced. They forgot something important. Honey badgers do not care about what should be possible. They care about what needs doing. And if you channel that attitude, if you refuse to accept limits just because someone else says they exist, you can accomplish things that looked impossible right up until the moment you did them. The galaxy had mocked the human species for being small, fragile, divided. They had dismissed Marcus as a child, Brutus as a simple animal. That mockery died on Kelix 4, buried under the rubble of what was thought to be an impregnable Kreeg stronghold. In its place grew respect, admiration, and a healthy dose of caution. Because the galaxy learned an important lesson that day. Never underestimate someone who fights like they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. Never dismiss the small warrior with the big heart and the unshakable determination. And above all, never, ever laugh at a human child and his honey badger. They might just end your war.